Okay. Good morning, Cecilia. Thank you for being here with us this morning.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Yes, this is the Latino Caucus 4Cs Writing and Working for Change project. So we're just really excited that you have accepted to interview with us.
Okay. Could you just tell me really quickly what is the project's sort of objective?
Oh, the objective is, just in a nutshell, at the centennial celebration, there was a publication, and the Latino caucus, all the color caucuses were marginalized in that everybody was given like 2 pages to tell our history. So the Latino, well, someone contacted NCTE, and they, told them about the problem. And so NCTE has commissioned this. And so it's going to be a multimedia project. It's going to be print, and it's going to be media. So once we finish editing, all of this part will be edited out. So then you'll have your interview, and you should put that online on your Vita.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, no, that's great. So anyway, thank you for being here with us. And I thought that maybe we would start this project, Writing and Working for Change, if you could tell a little bit about yourself first, and then we can start with the questions.
Okay. I will just say that my doctoral program was very interdisciplinary. So I had a specialization in composition and rhetoric theory, literary theory, African American women writers, and my dissertation was actually a collection of short stories. So it was really flexible and wonderful for me because I wanted to do everything. and that my professors thought that was probably not a good idea, that I needed to focus because it would be harder for me to get tenure and promotion and so on and so forth. And it might have been true, but I also felt that if I had to focus on only one area, I would be very unhappy. So personally, it was more satisfying to me to be able to do composition theory, creative writing, multicultural literary stuff. And so when I started my career, I basically was encouraged to join NCTE and 4Cs from the beginning. Okay. So that's just a little bio. I mean, I guess that's just my program, right? What I did for my doctoral program. I teach at the University of Central Florida in Orlando, and I've been here 17 years. I was just promoted to full professor. It took a long time, a very long time. So you see some of the issues with being very interdisciplinary. I'm on sabbatical this year, and my major project, I have 2 projects. My major project is working on a novel, revising a novel, getting it ready for circulation. And I also started a memoir, and I finished an essay that I sent off to a nonfiction editor about 3 weeks ago, so I'm hoping to hear about that. So I'm really at the beginning of my sabbatical. I'm looking forward to getting some good writing done. But my daughter just had a baby, so that's another project. And if she needs me, I will go to her. She's in Chicago. She's actually a medical anthropology doctoral student. So,
wow.
Yeah. So yeah, those are the things that are going on, and I feel honored to be asked to contribute my experience in 4Cs and NCTE.
Yes. Well, let's begin with when and why did you choose to attend Cs or NCTE?
Well, to be honest, membership and participation in 4Cs primarily was expected of all of us composition and rhetoric students at the State University of New York at Albany, where the professors with specializations in comp and rhetoric were Lil Brannon, Cy Novlock, and Steve North. One of my main area professors was still Lil Brannon, And so she basically said to us, she inculcated it in our, minds. You must belong to the profession. You must participate in conferences. And so 4Cs was basically, okay, you're a grad student, now you have to be a member of NCT and 4Cs.
That's great. Okay. So you were definitely encouraged. Why did you decide to join the caucus? Who was involved, and what did you sense was the importance of the caucus for others? Now here, I noticed that you are 4Cs, but were you also NCTE? If you could tell us a little bit about that, because there's a Latino caucus in NCTE.
Right. Well, it was one caucus.
Okay.
It was one caucus. There is just that there are members that are attending the 4Cs, and there are members that attend the NCTE convention, and some occasionally attend both. So my first experience with any caucus was actually with the Black Caucus. I went to my first NCTE in Baltimore in 1988, I believe it was. It might have been 87, 88. Yeah, most likely 87, 88. And I saw on the program that there was this Black Caucus, and I was like, whoa, okay. And the reason why I wanted to attend is because they had a writer, and I can't remember if it was June Jordan or Jane Cortez. It was an African-American woman writer that I admired, and I went to the meeting, and it was a huge ballroom. I mean, huge ballroom with almost all African-American educators, and it was so impressive. And they had a business meeting, and then they had this writer, and I thought, wow, this is amazing, this is so great. And I realized, oh wait, there's a Hispanic caucus. So I didn't go to that meeting because I had, of course, the caucuses are always booked against each other. That hasn't changed, has it?
No.
So I felt a great sense of, I don't want to say belonging, but just admiration for this organization. And I guess the next year, 28, 9, I think I went to, so actually I went to NCTE first. And then I got pregnant in 89, and I was supposed to present at the 4Cs in 1990, but I was like 8 months pregnant, so I wasn't allowed to go. But I had my paper read by one of my classmates because all my classmates were going. So that would have been 1990. So I guess I must have gone to the first Hispanic caucus meeting in 91, possibly, which might have been in Boston, because my daughter was a baby, and I took her with me. I went to every single 4Cs for like from 1990, 91, from 1991 to almost like 2010. So that's like what, 30 years, right? So 20 years. So I was very happy to find the Hispanic caucus, but it was nothing like the Black Caucus. There was only a handful of us, and the leader was Victor Villanueva. And if anybody has ever met Victor Villanueva, knows he's absolutely and utterly charming and totally welcoming, and I felt really comfortable. And I thought, oh, there's a place for us, for me. And the other thing that is important to note is that the caucus was always pan-ethnic. There were American Indian, Native American scholars that participated with us, Asian American. I don't think we had any African American colleagues because they had their own caucus, but our caucus was always pan-ethnic because there were so few of the rest of us, scholars and teachers of color. So it really was like a refuge from a very white organization. And it did become kind of like a vital point, a vital pivot on which my academic career and service especially turned, because I became involved in the organization and leadership almost right away. Victor had been the co-chair for a long time, and he was ready to pass it along. And I think he was actually co-chair for 15 years, and I ended up doing it for 15 years, which is a long time, and probably not. It isn't the right thing, because you get burned out, and it's exhausting. So when I joined, one of my goals was to have the newsletter published twice a year with contributions from the caucus members. I wanted to recruit more members. I wanted to get membership dues, sort of regularly organized. And I think I accomplished all those things. But we'll go on to the next question, because I'm sure there's going to be a lot of overlap.
Oh, yeah. So what were your goals? So you talked a little bit about those goals for the caucus. And what has been the role of the caucus in your career? And I think you've touched a little bit about that, but if you want to expand.
I felt that within the caucus, I was able to not just have my voice acknowledged and validated by the institution as far as the organization, but that it was a sort of communal and community voice, and we could take our concerns to the leadership of NCTE, and they would listen. They wouldn't necessarily act, but they would listen, and that was, at least I felt, some progress, right? And we would often have sort of testy exchanges with the leadership, because they had an idea about what the caucus should be and should do, and we had another idea, because ultimately a caucus is independent. It is not to be managed by the parent institution or organization that is NCTE or 4Cs. Because, like, when I'm talking about it, NCTE is like the large umbrella, and 4Cs is under NCTE. And I want to say also that I was on the task force when 4Cs was investigating whether or not to break off, like to get a divorce from NCTE. And after like a 2-year project, I think it was, there was just no way it could happen, because we could not afford it. So, I think I need to remind people of that this was investigated 20 years or so ago, and maybe 4Cs is in a different position now, but one of the things that 4Cs and NCTE have sometimes had happy relationships and sometimes not so happy, relationships. And I think part of it is because 4Cs is almost completely university and college affiliated members, and NCTE is almost universally K through 12 colleagues, So that's a kind of a rub.
Yes.
And I don't want to say more.
Okay, no, that's good. I think that gives a nice little history. I had not heard about the 4Cs wanting to break off at one point, but
yeah, they wanted a divorce, and it was not possible economically, financially. Couldn't do it.
Okay, all right. What were some of the issues that you witnessed or observed at the Cs or NCTE? You were there almost 20 years. How do you remember the caucus responding, and who were some of the leaders that took such an initiative?
Well, Victor has always been a leader, and it is because he's been around a long time, and because he knows everybody, And so Victor was kind of a shining star example for us as someone who could navigate the publishing world within NCTE. But even his book, Bootstraps, didn't come out like right away, right? I can't remember right now when that was published, but, you know, we were a long time waiting for that book, you know, to be published. And it was a long time that it was by itself. And there were no other books by Latino colleagues published by NCTE.
Wow.
I mean, you just look at the catalog. What books has NCTE published by Caucus colleagues? That's just a very easy search. So part of it is because a lot of us, one of the things that I think might be a problem is that colleagues cannot depend on financial reimbursement for travel to the conference. And a lot of networking happens at the conference. A lot of bonding and informal kind of negotiations happen at the conferences, both at NCTE and at 4Cs. So whether you are a K through 12 teacher who has a great idea about a book, but your principal, number one, won't even give you the days off to go to the convention or fund you to go to the convention, it's very discouraging. So, you know, universities and colleges are cutting, and humanities is usually the poorest of all disciplines. And so at my university, I think we are going to get $450, and that has to cover everything, and you have to be presenting. You cannot just go to a conference for professional development. So that's an ongoing issue, is that you can't really count on people returning year after year after year to the conference because they're not assured of funding. So we'll meet some fantastic people one year and go, oh wow, new colleagues, wonderful, emerging scholars, emerging teachers, and then we lose them. They don't come back the next year because they haven't gotten funded, you know? So I think that one of the important things is maintaining this kind of contact through either an online listserv or a website. And I felt like the Latino Caucus newsletter helped to keep people in touch. So it was published twice a year. We had a spring issue and a fall issue, and people would even make like announcements. Oh, you know, I had a baby, or I got promoted, or I got a publication. There was usually poetry. There was usually a book or movie review. There was a student writing that was included in it. There was always like an editorial. There might be an issue that we wanted to raise to the membership. So I know they're all archived because I had them archived and digitized. And Tracy Flores has the files. Yeah, so that's one of the things I think is really important to sort of connect to this project, is that there is a history and it's written.
Yes, and that's what we're trying to connect all the dots with this project.
So I don't know if I answered your question.
Yes, you did. Okay, any issues that you noticed while you were there at SEAS? Any marginalization of Latino research? I mean, I think you've touched a little bit about that because of the newsletters that you were publishing. Were you doing them the entire time?
Yeah, I published them for more than 15 years. The first issue was put together by Alfredo Luján,
okay,
who was one of the leaders in the caucus from way back. And this is another thing that's like in the history that maybe some people don't know or remember. But the Hispanic Association for Colleges and Universities actually funded the printing and mailing of the first issue.
wow.
And that was because my friend Laudelina Martinez was the president of HACU at that time. So it was like 1992 or 3, and maybe even earlier. Yeah, 1992 or 3. And of course, we didn't have any money. We didn't have any sponsorship or anything like that. And it was a one-page, two-sided, folded little newsletter. But I asked Lalina to please, help us with this, and she paid out of Haku's funds. She paid for the printing and for the mailing. And she was the first Puerto Rican to be the president of Haku.
Wow.
Lalina Martinez. And then after that, I got my university, Indiana University of Pennsylvania, to pay for the paper, the copying, and the postage. But of course, we had to collect funds anyway. We had to collect membership dues for that. So I guess I had to buy the paper, and maybe the university paid for the mailing. But we did collect membership in order to pay for the paper and printing.
And what about the issues that came up while you were the chair of the Latino Caucus?
Every year at a conference, there was always some racist incident, or two or three.
Wow.
Always, always, always. And so the caucus, traditionally is always held on Friday. So it's usually the second day, right? And so by the second day, everybody's already pretty pissed off and frustrated. So, people would complain that nobody came to a session that was really important about race or about language, and, or there would be snubs. The example that, there's two examples that I would give, and I think you probably interviewed Renee Moreno.
Yes, I haven't, but yes, we've interviewed him, yes.
Yeah, her. She will tell you her story about 4Cs and San Diego. She was one of the first class of the Scholars for the Dream, and there was a special session. And one of the things that I did as the caucus co-chair was that I tried to go to as many caucus members' sessions as I could. And at that time, there weren't that many of us. And sometimes I was just going to these sessions with the last name, oh, Martinez, I'm going to go to that session, and I'm going to recruit that person. I would go to the sessions and basically invite them to come and go to our meeting. I would give them a caucus, newsletter, capirotada, and I'd say, hi, I'm Cecilia. We'd love to have you. We want you to join the caucus. We want you to come back. So this is one of the things that I did was there's this personal touch that's really important, because the caucus always meant to me a warm, inviting, and welcoming place. And that was regardless of what kind of scholarship you did. We had it to have, for me, it was a refuge, and I wanted to make sure that it was a refuge for others. So Renee was giving this really important, poignant presentation, and the person who spoke after her was this white woman, and she totally, it was like she didn't hear a single word that Renee said, and said all of this racist crap, and then called her, she said, my Latino students are silent. They don't talk. And so, a bunch of us were like, oh my God, I can't believe she just said that. And, there were about 3 or 4 of us. And one of the people with me was Gail Okawa, who was also one of the original members of the Latino Caucus. She's retired now, but she was at Youngstown, Ohio. And she goes back even further than I do. And I would say you could interview her for even before Victor's time, because she and Victor are contemporaries. And she was on a lot of committees, she was on the executive committee, and she was on a lot of committees. Anyway, so Renee, is just assaulted by this stupid woman in the way that she just dismissed her presentation. And we got up and walked out. We basically, because members of the audience were then like piling on top of Renee. So we just, a bunch of us got up and said, this is intolerable, this is racist, you know, we're not going to stand for it. And we stormed out.
Wow.
This was in San Diego. And of course, the first thing we did was find Victor Villanueva and give him all the complaints. And he says, okay, good, you're mad. Now you need to participate in the caucus. Because this is a place where you can get your voice heard, where you can express your concerns to the leadership. And that's why we did. A bunch of us did, you know, sort of get recruited in that way. And so that's how I became energized and invigorated. And another example, which was much more recent, is that we had a person at NCTE who worked in Champaign-Urbana who was our advocate. Her name was Dr. Sandra Gibbs.
Yes.
And she would look out for us, and she would let us know of any kind of legislation that they were going to, you know, consider, or any rules that they were going to change that would impact us, people of color, not just the African Americans, not just the Black Caucus, but the Latino Caucus. And so Sandra was basically fired. And there was all kinds of, you know, it was really similar, just a very ugly thing. And we were furious. And there were boycotts and letters. And we had, actually sent a packet of 50 certified letters to the president of NCT at that time, who was Kent Williamson, who has passed on.
Yes.
But Kent and nobody from NCTE even acknowledged our letters. They didn't even acknowledge them. So we were just furious because, you know, Sandra didn't deserve to be treated that way, and we didn't deserve to be treated that way. So that was another experience. You know, again, there's always something going on. And I think that the fact is that we have to complain and protest and really make our issues known to them. And they almost get kind of embarrassed, and then they want to do the right thing. But they don't do the right thing to start with. They never do. And
that's why we're in this project.
Exactly. That's that, and that's their modus operandi. They don't even think about it. Like, what are we for if not to consult with you people at NCTE so that you do the right thing? But they don't consult us. They just say, oh, here's this curriculum and it's going to be so good. And we're like, excuse me, you don't have any Latinos on this curriculum. And they're like, oh, okay, I guess we should do that. So, you know, we're supposed to be consulted. And that was one of the things that we also complained about, because in, I think it was this was when Bobby Sarisa Hutchins and I were co-chairs, and NCTE was trying to get the caucus to become affiliated. And this meant a legal relationship, so that they would give us money, they would give us space on their server and blah, 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 blah. But it came with conditions. And so there was this kind of these meetings that we were invited to with leadership. At that time, Kathy Yancey, who was at FSU, she was the president of NCTE. And she invited me and Bobby and Hyvan, who from the Asian American Caucus, and there was this wonderful woman from the Black Caucus, and I can't remember what her name is now. And I think Joyce Rain Anderson from the American Indian Caucus. They invited us down to a meeting in Washington, D.C. to sort of tell us why it would be such a good idea for the caucuses to be affiliated with NCTE. And the first day, Kent Williamson was also president. Well, he was, the executive director at that time. And he missed the first day, and he missed this amazing history of the caucus, of the Black Caucus, that the woman from the Black Caucus gave. And so he came in like after the fact, and we were like, dude, you should have been here to hear this. she talked about how Black scholars and educators couldn't get on the sessions, wouldn't be allowed in the hotels. I mean, like, it was like civil rights issues from the get-go within this organization. And of course, you know, African Americans have been founding their own organizations for many, many years, when MLA, for example, wasn't, you know, inviting African Americans to propose sessions or anything like that. So they had their own organizations called the CLA, the College Language Association, which continues to have conferences. But CLA was started because MLA was exclusive, right? And so NCTE is the largest organization for teachers of English, right? And language arts teachers. So there were many African American teachers who wanted to be part of the national organization, but the organization was not really interested in them. So they said, nope, we're gonna make a change. And so their leadership really paved the way for the Latino Caucus, American Indian Caucus, Asian American Caucus, Queer Caucus. So their history is really, we exist because they started it. So anyway, yeah, there's always issues of marginalization. And the other time when we make our voices known is that after the conference, there is a meeting on Sunday morning with the chair of 4Cs and the future chair of 4Cs. And we basically, it's called Conference Concerns. I think it's Conference Concerns. It may be Caucus Concerns, but the caucus always sends a representative to this meeting on Sunday morning after the conference, and we complain, and we protest, and we tell them what went wrong and how they should deal with it. So I don't know if this still goes on, but I went to many of those meetings.
Yeah. Okay. What are some of, okay, you've given me some of your earliest memories of the caucus interacting with others and the kinds of discussions, resolutions, and projects that transpired. Any projects that may have come out from the complaints?
Yeah. Definitely. Scholars for the Dream is a wonderful thing that came out of these issues where we wanted to have more students of color and emerging scholars of color come to the conference. So it started out with a little bit of money, and then we got a little bit more money, and then more Scholars for the Dream were invited. And they have a network, and that's really a really wonderful thing. There was a task force for the involvement of people of color, and that was a great group. And, you know, I remember Jackie Jones Royster was on that group, and there was many people from the Black Caucus and the Latino Caucus, and you know, we were fighting the good fight. You want us to get involved? These are the ways to get us involved. And they're like, oh, okay, we'll just have this task force, and that means you're involved. But so they, you know, they want to recruit us to do stuff, but often it doesn't come with any resources. So, for example, to be on the membership of the executive committee of 4Cs, you don't really, right? It's labor intensive because you have to go to NCTE and 4Cs, and usually there's another meeting, right? So they only give you a little bit of money toward travel. So your university has to support you, right? If you want to be chair of 4Cs, your university has to give you a graduate student. And they will pay for a part of your travel for NCTE and 4Cs and the workshops and so on and so forth. But your university has to kick something in. So your university has to say, oh, this is a good idea. We will help you to do this. And it's a lot of work, and it's a lot of travel. So if you're teaching, this is something that, you know, there's a cost to your students, to your department, to your university, right?
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. So there was emerging teacher grants. NCTE offered some grants for emerging teachers. There were, and I'm sure there continue to be mentoring initiatives. And I think none of these things happen without us pushing.
Yes. Okay, wonderful. That's great. What positive and or negative actions have you seen between the 4Cs and or NCTE in being inclusive of Latino scholars and educators? So now this is getting to the program. You've talked a little bit about that. Anything else?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a mixed bag. I think it depends on the leadership within NCTE administration and the presidential team. Who is chair of 4Cs? Has this person exhibited a track record of working with educators of color? Is this person educable? Because they don't necessarily have to have a track record, but they have to be willing to cooperate and to advocate. So one of the things that I've seen year after year many times is that when you have presidents of NCTE that might be from the K through 12, it's like, where do you teach? Where are your students? If the Latino demographic of the United States makes us the largest minority, the majority minority, and the majority minority is under the age of 18, those kids are in your classrooms. What are you doing to help those kids? What are your practices? What is your curriculum? What have you done to adjust to those students in your classes? And we're not just talking about Texas or Illinois or Florida, because we're everywhere.
Yeah.
Right? So, the curriculum must represent its demographic. And of course, it would be lovely if the educators also represented the demographic. But we're not there.
No, we aren't there at all.
There's only 2% women of color faculty at universities. 2%. It's still a wasteland.
Yeah. How have you observed the Cs or NCTE be responsive to Latino scholars and educators? And what actions has that organization taken that you've seen that you agree or disagree with? And you talked a little bit about that, with the going on Sunday mornings to express concerns, and things come out of that.
Yeah, and it's we cannot let up. We have to continuously make our concerns known, write to the administration, call on the phone, network with the other caucuses. That's another important issue, I think, is that the caucuses always work together in order to get stuff done, in order to make it known that we weren't going to stand for this. That the organization needed to be responsive to its members. Even if we are a minority of the membership,
Yeah.
We're active members,
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, great. How helpful has the Cs or NCTE or colleagues in the Latino Caucus been in your publishing? And what kind of mentoring has there been or not been for you and then for others?
Like I said, Victor's book was the only book by a Latino that was published by NCTE for many, many, many years. You're going to see a big gap before you get a book by Raul Sanchez or Christina Kirklider or anybody, right?
Right.
The mentoring really has always been from colleagues, and it is essential and extremely important and valuable because it always is done with love, right? So Victor Villanueva has probably reviewed more manuscripts than like 25 people put together. And he was always willing to read manuscripts, whether they were essay manuscripts or book manuscripts. And this was like under the table. This was not like NCTE sent the manuscript to Victor for him to review. No, this is us saying, Victor, will you please read this for me because I don't know if I'm making any sense. And he would do it because it behooves him to have more of us published. And I think that the books that were published, if you read the acknowledgments,
yeah,
almost all of them were saying, Victor Villanueva. A shout out to Victor Villanueva because he helped birth it. Okay, so Victor was helpful to me. I remember I was writing an article for an MLA book, and I, was trying to do some kind of cross-genre work and sort of making my way as I was doing it, and he read it. I was so full of, intimidation and nerves because I wasn't sure if I was doing this right, and it was early in my career, and he was just saying, just do what comes natural. And I was like, oh, I can do that? So, yeah, Victor was super helpful. The other people helped, others. But if you look at those acknowledgement pages, you'll see.
Yes, yes. Okay. What was your role in mentoring others?
I think I did a lot of mentoring through the caucus, especially of young emerging scholars, graduate students. One of the things that I also did was I brought undergraduates to the caucus. We never had undergraduates come to conferences. I brought undergraduates to a lot of conferences. And I tried to get, what's really ironic is that often there's more funding for undergraduates than there are for faculty members. Yeah. Because they're the student union, SGA, student, whatever. Anyway, a lot of student groups will fund students to go do presentations. Then there's usually undergraduate research will give money, departments will give money. But if it's for faculty, we're out of luck. But yeah. I often got students to co-present on panels with me, and in that way was initiating them into professional development. And so that was one of the things that I did. I also organized the first Latino Caucus workshop because, again, I thought we need to do some mentoring. We need to have a time outside of the caucus meeting where we could review manuscripts, we can talk about dissertations, we could talk about the job search, we could talk about all the things that we need to do that we can't do in an hour.
Yes.
So I organized the first 4 workshops. The first one was in San Francisco. I think it was 2005. Yeah, 2005. And then I did the following 5. I think the last one I organized was the one in New Orleans. I had co-organizers. I always had co-organizers, but as the caucus co-chair, I did a lot of stuff on my own.
Yeah.
I did a lot of nagging. I did a lot of phone calls and begging. Come on, please help me do this. Come on, this is, you need to join and do this, and so on and so forth. So I did a lot of that. I kept in contact with people to encourage them to submit proposals. I reviewed proposals. I did a lot of things for the caucus, but then I also served on committees and task forces. So I was on the Exemplar Committee. I was on the Scholars for the Dream Committee for several years. I was on the nominating committee for 4Cs. I was on the Rainbow Strand Conference Planning Committee. I was on the College Section Nominating Committee. I was on the NCTE Election College Section Committee. So yeah, I mean, you know, it's a lot of years.
Yes, and a lot of work. It all takes a lot of work. I mean, it's a great line on the Vita, but.
But I will say this: last, you know, this last year was my promotion year, and national service is really important when you're going up for promotion. Full professor and, to a lesser extent, associate, but it's you know, if you're at a university that values, you know, that's like a research, you know, institution, they're not going to value a lot, but the little that you do should be national.
Yeah, that's good. Let's see. What roles have you undertaken within the Cs? I think you've talked about that. And what kind of benefits have you witnessed from such experiences? So maybe I have, you've talked about all the task force, the, you know, the 4 Latino mentoring sessions.
Right. I think it's always good to meet people and network. So when you're on these committees, you do meet people that you wouldn't ordinarily bump into. And so in that way, you learn more about the organization, you learn more about how other universities function.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a service is a way to really learn how stuff works, how things get done. You know, I was the director of women's studies at this university and at my former university, and I learned a lot. I learned a lot by doing that.
Yeah, yeah, the inside perspective.
Yeah.
What is the story? We're coming to the end, Cecilia. What is the story you would like to tell about the caucus, and how would you like others to remember the caucus? Now, you've told a couple of very nice stories, but I don't know if you want to add.
Well, it's not maybe a story so much as a kind of, maybe it is a story. Okay, so it's a story about the caucus's warmth and welcoming vibe. It is what drew me and kept me returning to the caucus and then taking on leadership and service. We were a family, and families have new members all the time.
Yeah.
And then there's some family members that are around a long time, right?
Yeah.
But, you know, you try to keep the sense of somos familia. And, you know, families have squabbles all the time. So I think that the story about the caucus's sense and sensibility is that, you know, we should be welcoming. It's part of our founding. And the other part of our founding is that we're pan-ethnic. It's never been exclusive. Our mission statement said, like-minded folks. It didn't say you had to have a certain blood percentage. It said, if you believe what we believe, that students of color, and particularly Latino students, need to have their issues advocated for, yeah, join us, right? So I feel like that's very curriculum, how our test scores are not up to snuff. Of course, those vary. Those vary depending on the school district, the state, and so on and so forth. But I think that one of the things of the caucus, which I have to say, I had an experience at the Las Vegas caucus meeting. So that was a couple years ago?
Yeah, a couple years ago. Well, about 3 maybe years ago.
I went to that caucus meeting and I felt very unwelcome.
Oh.
I I felt like I was a stranger. I knew people in the room, but there were more new folks than there were returning folks. And I am not asking anybody to pay homage to me or anything like that. I'm just saying, wow, there is no welcoming vibe here. Because I could be a stranger. And if I walk into the caucus meeting as a stranger, you should welcome me.
Yeah.
So I left feeling very, very disconcerted. I really did.
I think we couldn't attend because, in fact, haven't been able to attend because they schedule our presentations at the same time as the Latino caucus. Oh my gosh. It's happened like 3 times now.
Right. And that's another thing that you do too, because actually that was one of the issues of Las Vegas, is that, wait a minute, my computer needs to be plugged in.
Okay.
They booked a session to honor Victor Villanueva against a featured session there that I was on, so we couldn't attend each other. And yeah, so like we had a big ballroom for my thing, and there was like, I don't know, 15 people, and of the 15 people, there were 10 that were old folks from the caucus, or maybe not even that many. So that was really like, wow, what happened, But yet at the caucus meeting, there was a lot of people there. There was like maybe 30 people. And like I said, most of them were new, young faces. And that's wonderful. That is super, super important. But I think that the thing that needs to be remembered in the history of the caucus is that the place is a place of refuge and warmth. And even if I don't agree with your ideological theories of education, we should get along.
Yes.
If I'm not from Arizona, you should get along with me. If I'm not from Texas or California. So yeah, that's one of the things that I think should be remembered about the caucus. It was always a place of warmth and refuge.
Yeah. That's wonderful. Now we've come to the last question, and the last question was there a question I did not ask that I should have asked? And if so,
I think that when you interview people that have been involved in the caucus for a long time, you should always ask them what their cross-caucus work has been. I think that's really, really important because we really need to work together. All the caucuses should work. We should know each other. Everybody should know who is the leader of the Asian American caucus, and who leads the American Indian caucus, and who is leadership of the Black caucus. These are things that need to be remembered, right? Is that we always work together.
That's a great point. I think it came up in Christina's, Christina Ramirez. I had an interview with her. That came up. She had the feminist caucus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I went to one of their meetings once and also felt really silenced. But again, it depends on leadership. It depends on what, who's there. Are they really wanting to hear us?
Are they what?
Do they really want to hear us, or they just want the color there? Oh, we can check that box off.
Yeah. But anyway, yes, I'll be sure to let the others know. I'm interviewing, we're doing this project with Romeo Garcia. Mm-hmm. He's a doctoral student at Syracuse, and Iris Ruiz, which you probably know.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah. We're putting this project together and interviewing people. And I really want to thank you, Cecilia. I felt it was so enlightening for me to hear what was going on in the early 2000s with the caucus. And if you think of anything, feel free to email me. And because we're still at the beginning stages of putting it together and writing the essay and whatnot. But if you remember anything later on, feel free to email me, and we could even add it to the interview.
Well, I would also say that, your university, your college, your department, some of them are more willing to help you than others. So like sometimes when I came to this school, to the University of Central Florida, they actually put in my contract that they would pay me to go to Four Seas as long as I was the co-chair. So they gave me $500 to use to travel, to go to Four Seas, to run the caucus, to do the business meeting and do all those things. They started an account at the university where I can deposit the dues. They paid for the printing and the mailing, and they gave me a graduate student. So like that was under one chair, but then we had financial issues and we lost all that help. So that's another thing that is it varies. It really varies. And I do also believe that the caucus should always have a co-chair membership, leadership, someone who represents the NCTE group, NCTE K through 12, that goes to that meeting. And should be somebody who's the co-chair from Four Cs that goes to that meeting. Yes. So that the caucus is always a presence at both conferences.
Yeah, that's great. I like those ideas. I think Edie's is one that does that, and Romeo Garcia, but he's a doctoral student, but he's up and coming, and so we may hear more of him as time goes on. But Cecilia, I want to thank you so much for your time. I'm so glad we were able to connect so quickly, and it worked out.
Yay, thank you. You send me a link when you have it ready to go.
Yes, I'm going to send it to you so you can read it.
I want to go to New Mexico. Find me a way to get to New Mexico.
Oh, yeah. What would you like to do here?
I'd love to do a reading or creative writing workshop or a presentation on, I've been wanting to go to New Mexico. That's like one of the places like, oh, I want to go to New Mexico. So
I'm in Las Cruces.
Ah, do you know, I have a friend who teaches in the anthropology department, Miriam Chaikin.
Oh, yeah, I know Miriam.
You know Miriam? She worked with me at IUP.
Where's IUP?
That's where we were before, in Pennsylvania.
In Pennsylvania.
That's where she and I worked before.
Oh, well, you know what? She's very, I've worked with her on the IRB board, and now she's the dean of the honors college here at New Mexico State University. She just got that position.
I'm going to write to Miriam.
Yeah, you should. And I belong to I'm actually the chair of the Hispanic Faculty Staff Caucus here at NMSU. I just got elected to that. And we have the graduation stall, and she nominates people. She nominates her undergraduate honors students. So she was there at the last one. I was really impressed.
She's great. She's really great. And her husband, Tom Connolly, too.
Oh, yeah, I don't know him. I just know her.
Yeah, they're both anthropologists. Well, I'm going to write to Miriam and tell her that I heard that she was the dean of honors and she needs to invite me over there.
Yeah, maybe we can do something together with the College of Education. Do you do anything with K-12?
I've done workshops on, multicultural literature, and I've done presentations at the middle school level here.
We'd be interested in something in writing.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe we can do something with, I'm the Don and Sarah Kidd Endowed Chair.
Oh, wow.
In literacy. And so, yeah, that's why I'm here in New Mexico. That's why I left California. And so we do a conference, but mainly it's been the K-6 teachers that come. We've not been able to attract, and it could be, I have that perspective, the K-6, But it would be good to attract a high school group, the high school English teachers.
Yeah, yeah, they're usually overwhelmed. I mean, I taught high school just for a year, and I taught K through 6 for a couple of years. And I can't imagine going to any conferences. I can't imagine it. It's only when you become a university professor or a college teacher where you can think, oh, okay, so I think I could do this. And luckily some people get support from their colleges, their deans, and most of the time, you have to scrape by and pay your own way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, now that you know that I'm in New Mexico, and you have 2 colleagues now.
Yay! Awesome. Awesome.
How long is your sabbatical?
Until I don't go back to work until next year in August.
Oh, you've got a whole year.
Yep.
You want to do something in New Mexico this year or next year?
I would love to. I would totally love to.
Okay, well, let's see. I'll talk with Miriam and
Awesome.
let's see what we can do. Okay.
I'll put a bug in your ear too.
Okay, wonderful. She knows me.
I appreciate your interest in my perspective, and I miss my caucus colleagues. I do. I guess it was 2009. 2010. I decided that I was going to sort of pull away from 4Cs because I was doing a lot of creative writing. And that's another thing. 4Cs used to have a big creative writing group, and they don't do it anymore. They used to have a special interest group of creative writers, and they don't do it anymore. So I go to AWP now, which is almost always around the same time as 4Cs. Okay. So I've been going to AWP for the last 5 years or so.
Okay. What's AWP?
The Association of Writers and Writing Programs.
Oh,
so
okay.
It's for creative writing teachers.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that fits the bill.
Yeah.
Anyway, Cecilia, it was really a pleasure to interview you, and we'll keep talking.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.